Right. All right. Good morning. Good morning. I'm gonna go ahead and get us started. I wish I could play some music, you know. Towards the last couple of days of session, I started singing in the well, and I don't think people took to it too well. Okay, well, I see some folks are on. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Colton, are you there?
Yes, good morning.
All right. Well, I'm gonna get us started. I'm so excited to see you all. I'm so excited to be able to finish another session. And, it was a doozy, if you will. So I'm gonna share with us and looking forward to hearing from you all. Please, just for a few housekeeping things, as attendees, there is a question box. So if you want to ask a question, please go ahead and type in your question. You can also raise your hand, and Colton can help us out with that. And so, just one who sang it better. Did you? I know. Thank you, Ian, for this note. I sang like a version of Donna Summers, and while I was chairing, I told everyone it was getting loud in here. In fact, I was like, it's getting loud in here. And then Ken DeGraff finished the lyric. It was amazing. It was all the things. So, good morning, Ian. Glad to see you here. All right, family. So I'm going to jump in. Looking forward to hearing your questions. Again, please pop them into the question and answer box or the chat, and then, or raise your hand if you have questions as we go. And so, again, yay, 2025. We just finished our last day of session was on Wednesday. And I will say, I think I looked forward to nothing more than to sleeping into a whole 8 a.m. Because every day I was waking up at 5:36 in the morning. So Thursday was fantastic as the day after session. But let's jump right in. And so today I'm going to just share with you a little bit about District 7. Big shout out to a lot of folks who are on today, who come every Saturday to support our hard district, our best district. They work very hard to support us. And then I will share with you a little bit of what I and the Democrats accomplished this session. We'll open it up to any issues that you'd like to raise or any questions that you have, and then we'll close out. All right. So just to get us started, if you are, for many of you who might be new, because we're live streaming this, and this is also something that folks can click on later if they didn't have a chance to watch today. I am your wonderful House District 7 representative, and your Senate district. I'm sorry, your senator for the Senate district is James Coleman, and he also has the privilege of serving, and let's give him a big round of applause for being our Senate president. He did a fantastic job. This is his first session as Senate president. And so we always want to give him a shout out because we are both of your representatives. For those of you who live in House District 7, I'm your rep. Senator Coleman is your senator. He also shares a Senate district that encompasses House District 8 as well. But I have the pleasure of serving on our Judiciary and Education committees, and I also have the privilege of serving as the Assistant Majority Leader, which means the Democrats voted me to assist our Majority Leader, who is Monica Duran. If you're unfamiliar, this is a picture of House District 7. And so we were redistricted last cycle, and so our boundary pretty much goes to Quebec, above I-70. And in fact, it's above the target for those of you who live in Northfield. So we have Northfield in our district, we have Montbello in our district, and all of Green Valley Ranch, and those, side streets that go all the way up to the airport. For many of you, if you live on 57th Avenue, you do not live in Denver, and your representative is Michael Carter. And so you can see here our map. For what it's worth, House District 7 used to come about here and included all of Central Park, and that has recently been changed in the last 2 years. And the next thing here is your Senate district. So Senate District 33 goes from what we say 5 points to the airport, and it includes 5 points, Park Hill, North Park Hill, um, all of Central Park, as well as Montbello and Green Valley Ranch. So just a quick update. But I usually lead off with that because our neighbors, House District 7 is incredibly dynamic, and I'll go back to it. And I kind of think about us within our three different zip codes. We have 80238, 80239, and 80249. And so sometimes we have some issues that may be unique, but I will say that across my district, which quite frankly is actually the most diverse district in Denver, whether it's by racial or ethnic demographic or income demographic, we've got a lot of great neighbors who are just trying to, do their best to provide for their families and make Colorado a better place. And so, I do believe House District 7 is heaven, and I am so grateful for all of our neighbors. It has been a pleasure and a privilege to knock on doors, to see you all at the grocery stores or at the football games or just somewhere in Northfield, probably, looking for some good food. We just really want to acknowledge here that our district is so multifaceted, and it is a true honor and privilege to represent all of you. Because of you, I'm able to, work differently, work harder. I can say different things because or confident in our neighbors here in House District 7 and what their issues are. All right. And Colton, help me out if you see any questions in the chat. Okay. So I do want to just start by saying, in addition to being your representative, I'm also a member of the Black Democratic Legislative Caucus, and we were able to do some really great work this session. We typically start every session, if you are familiar, it starts mid-January. And one of the first things that we celebrate is the Dr. King's holiday. And we celebrate that not just because, for the obvious reasons of celebrating Dr. King, but it was also our predecessors who really fought to make that a state holiday in Wilma Webb. And so it's really important for us to continue the legacy. And so some of the first times anybody will hear from any legislator in the well or that's down on the microphone is typically from me or a member of the Black Caucus in celebration of Dr. King's holiday, and that is quickly followed by Black History Month. But in our legislature these days, we've come a long way with this, maybe full circle. Our colleagues across the aisle usually let us know what we're going to be kind of up against when it comes to fighting for certain things. I'll get into that a little bit later, but DEI and honestly, removing vestiges of history has been on the president's agenda for quite some time. But this year, we were able to kind of set a tone and really move the Republicans to a place there where they could support our resolutions. But not only that, I do want to give a shout out to the Black Caucus for standing up to protect DEI. It became a theme throughout the session, even though we didn't necessarily legislate around it. I'm sure we will. We fought very hard to be sure the words diversity, equity, and inclusion were not eliminated from the things we were doing at the state, even though we were threatened not only by our colleagues across the aisle, but there were concerns within the Democratic Party. Would we put ourselves at risk to not receive dollars? And we feel that the erasure of the diversity, equity, inclusion movement is tantamount to the erasure of our culture and our history. The president signed three executive orders that not only addressed DEI, but also dismantled the United States Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. And in that space, we have fought to end the school to prison pipeline, to include Black culture and Black history in curriculum. And with the Office of Civil Rights dismantled, there is a question on who will uphold the anti-discrimination work, especially that needs to happen at schools. I will also say the president's executive order to dismantle DEI also deeply impacted the EEOC. In fact, the president undid the EEO, right? And that's um, the office that works on equal employment, right? There was an executive order signed by Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1965 that created that term, EEO. And that executive order also created the term affirmative action in the sense that President Johnson said we must take affirmative steps. We must be proactive now to mitigate the impacts of racism. And the President Trump expressly overwrote that executive order after 60 years. So I just wanted to start and give a shout out because this issue is one that would remain a theme for me, not just in bringing my own bills, but in reading the bills that were brought forward. And then lastly, the Black Caucus fought for a particular bill. I think Ian's on here, give a big shout out. We worked with the End Slavery Colorado Coalition that included also Together Colorado to take on the work that they have been doing for quite some time to end slavery. And that means in Colorado, we voted to remove slavery from our Constitution, which means no one should be compelled to work. And the way that we see it showing up kind of across the country these days is within corrections. And so while End Slavery Colorado is taking on corrections to say you can't compel people to work if they don't want to, we took a small step to say that, you know what, families should have the right to see their loved ones who are incarcerated. And what that means is by us making it a right, we said visitation is not something you earn. Visitation is something that you have. Now, we certainly provided the provisions for corrections to create safety around that. But just that slight change of not something you earn to something that you have is a big deal for our community. And so I was proud to sponsor that, not only as the House District 7 representative, but as a member of the Black Caucus. We know that African Americans are 4% of the state, and they are pushing a third of those who are incarcerated. And we think that, actually, we know that our community, particularly our children, need to see their parents. They need to see their uncles, their grandparents, and that connection, that human right actually does create better outcomes, not only for those who are incarcerated, but for their families. So if we think about a young person, how important is it that that young person has a connection with his mother or father? We want to mitigate the hurt because we know hurt people hurt people. And so I wanted to start with that. It's an early bill. Anything that has a 10, right? So it was the 13th bill introduced, and it was very much a priority for our caucus and for me to reset the way that we do incarceration. We need to break some of these cycles. And, kids need to see their parents. So I want to thank, not only House District 7 for giving me the confidence to run this bill, but on behalf of the Black Caucus, we had a community hearing where we asked our neighbors to come to share their stories. And the stories were just amazing and astounding. So we did pass this bill. I think it's still in the governor's hands. He did talk to us about if he'd sign it or not. And that's something that, this session has become more political than most, is working with Governor Polis to be sure that the laws the legislature creates and passes get signed by him. So cross your fingers. And if you have any time, social media tag or send to the governor to sign this bill as well. All right, so I'll jump into what my priorities are for this session and probably moving forward. And if you haven't had a chance before, check out my website. It's just electjenniferbacon.com, and there is a tab where you can see more of a description of my priorities. But the first is building and maintaining educational impact primarily through public schools. My second priority is to protect and create pathways to affordable wages, housing, and healthcare. And my last priority area is social and environmental justice. And so last session, I did a lot of work in these three areas. If you want to know what my things are, these are my things. You can primarily see my bill titles will probably be in these areas. And so I do bring bills forward. I sponsor bills in these areas, but also sitting on the education and judiciary committees. I read a lot of bills that come through and I lend my voice there too. Should these bills pass? What are the impact to community? What are the equitable impacts communities to communities? Which communities may be impacted more than others? These are the questions that I always ask in committee and as I run bills. So just to give you a little bit of a highlight, here are some bills that we thought were really interesting to share. This year, I ran 27 bills. 8 of them I sponsored on the Senate side, 19 on the House side. But my win record, I think like a third of them, we didn't get all the way through, or I stopped working on because they blended into other bills. So this year, my record is maybe 2-1, and that's not that bad. I'm also serving as the assistant majority leader, so I got a lot going on in session. But before I even talk about the bills, I just want to talk about the picture here. It is really important to me that every year I bring a bill that is ideated by our neighbors, that our community dreams up of. And it's very important to me that we get our neighbors, and particularly our young ones, our students, into the Capitol. So this is a picture of students who have been working with Cleo Parker and also from Hill Middle School, who came in to testify on a bill to strengthen the Tony Gramsci Youth Services kind of grant system. And so I got to give a shout out to these young ones. They waited till like 7 o'clock at night. They came to the Capitol at 10, did a tour, did a workshop, and they really shared their voices. And I'm pretty sure my colleagues in committee, they couldn't even tell you what the bill was about. They just wanted to support it because the kids wanted to support it. So their voices are so important, and we want to give them a shout out for coming down to the Capitol. So I'm going to break outside of the presentation just in case you all want to see what we're doing in real time. I want to show you, and you can see my screen, how to check up on me to see what we're working on. And so if you've never seen it before, you can always go to, just Google Colorado General Assembly, and it'll take you to the website, or I always do the short version and it gets you there, coleg.gov. And we say coleg.gov, and it will take you to the General Assembly's website. And so if you want to see what I'm working on, you can find me by legislator. Or if you're interested in topics, you can go to committees because committees are organized by topic, and we can take a look at that. So committees are organized. You can see here, I serve on education and judiciary. Naturally, education talks about education, and judiciary is the space where we usually talk about public safety, creating new crimes, and civil protection. And so if you click on either one of them, normally during session, you will see all of the people who are on the committee. That's my, like my hair, my lovely face. And then when we're in session, you can see here are the dates, right? And here are the bills that we are hearing. So this is the Education Committee. Let's just click, perhaps if it was April 2nd, we heard about Senate Bill 178. So if you ever want to know what we're working on, you can go to the committee page. If you want to know what I'm working on, and we can go back to the beginning, you can always just go to legislators and type me in, or you can literally just search, but it's alphabetical. There's House District 7. This is my office phone and it's my email. And it'll take you to my page where you can see the committees that I'm on, my position, and you can see all of the bills that I sponsored. So as I go back to the presentation, I just wanted to show you how to do that. And, on the presentation, we also, you can see some of my titles here, and I'll go through them. But if you want to see the bills that I sponsored in any session, there's a drop-down box here. And so if you take a look, you can see my titles. This was my environmental and increasing transparency impact. That was a fun bill. We're like, hey, maybe there should be a label that says, so people can't question it. Burning of petroleum creates, byproduct that impacts climate change. It was a great bill to work. But you can see my topics here, right? So these are, my priority areas: criminal justice, financial literacy, criminal justice. Okay? And so just to share again, the some highlights. So we sponsored a bill that would provide a grant program to help turn some schoolyards into also community parks. So for example, if you live in Montbello, right in the middle by Maxwell Elementary School, and Montbello High School is right next to it, all of those plots of land and those playgrounds are split between the city and county of Denver and Denver Public Schools. So our question was, wouldn't it be great if kids had access to the playgrounds at Maxwell when school was out, and vice versa? So how do we help change to where some communities have no parks at all? In fact, all they have are schools and playgrounds. How do we change that to it's accessible all year, because we know the importance of play? And so the bill created a grant program to do that, where city and county and, for example, Denver Public Schools could work together to monitor the spaces, but that they'd be accessible to all of our kids. And so while I was really excited to bring this on behalf of Denver, this is going to impact some communities that are much smaller or rural districts in the state, who, again, the only playground in the neighborhood or in the city might be at the schools. And so how can they open that out so kids can go outside and play? So it was a really fun bill to work on. And then my big educational impact highlight bill of this session was by saying that all students need to learn personal financial literacy, all students in the state of Colorado. And so it was a fantastic bill to work on. It was bipartisan. I worked with the Republican Representative Hartsook out of Douglas County, who sometimes we are just, oil and water. You know what I mean? But we went through that whole working of this bill with a great sense of effort and a lot of humor and fun. I called myself, we did the whole ebony and ivory thing. We did a little bit of country, a little bit of rock and roll. But at the end of the day, it was a really robust discussion about what students say they need from schools. And so I was really proud of this bill because it's very current. There was no student that I talked to, regardless if they were in House District 7 or in Trinidad or in Grand Junction or in Parker or in Colorado Springs, that said, there was no student that said that we do not need financial literacy. Every student said, please teach us about how to manage credit. How can we, buy a house one day? And so it was a very robust journey to get there. We had to work very hard with our school counselors, with our teachers, with schools, but also students and families to get this passed. And so you might be asking, like, why was that hard? Well, Denver Public Schools, and in fact, one of the things I did before I left school board was say that all students need to take a financial literacy class before they graduate. Well, turns out it's really hard in the state of Colorado to tell every school district to do something because of our concept of local control. And so it was a big win to say that all students in Colorado, right? Each school district has to fit in financial literacy in a class that they require to graduate. And that's what we were able to get done. Again, it was a generational issue. And so, aside from that, an educational impact, my work this session was to protect the funding for K 12. This was a big budget crisis year, and the governor originally proposed to cut about $150 million from K 12. So it was, incumbent upon the legislature. Uh, Big shout out to the teachers. The teachers took off a day of work to come down to the Capitol and set to say, do not cut money from K-12. And we were able to protect that money. And so for me, even though that's not a bill, that's a huge win for this legislative session to have not allowed us to go back into underfunding. Well, okay, not fully funding K-12. And right now we fund K-12 up to the 1989 levels of what funding's required. So that's a whole different discussion, and we're going to work on that too as we move forward. But other highlights from my bills in the area of justice, we created a peace officer conduct database, but we also created a whistleblower protection. So unfortunately, we learned the hard way that police officers who want to speak up and do the right thing aren't always protected. Their jobs aren't protected. And so this session, we said that a police officer can be a whistleblower. If they see another police officer doing community harm or doing harm to another person who's in law enforcement, that they will be protected. Okay, the other big highlight in the justice area is that we continued our work on second chance hiring. So if you have a criminal record, the law before last session said for 10 years after your incarceration, that criminal record could be used against you in getting an occupational license or a license to do anything in the automotive field. And so this year, along with last year, we said, let's cut that down to a 3-year period. So if you have a criminal record, the look back period is from 3 years from your last date of incarceration, where that could be held against you. And so that is pretty much all crimes except, what we call the first degree crimes like first degree murder. But for other crimes, now we have cut back the period to 3 years where that could be used against you. So that was really important for us. We have a lot of people who, served their time, stood up to their responsibility, have been taking classes to go back to work because there is dignity in going to work. And we all know what happens. If you can't earn legally, people turn to earning illegally, and that is not healthy for communities. So we want people to know, even if you serve your time, keep working, get those certificates, get those credits, because we believe that if you are committed to the space, you will be properly vetted, but your record in and of itself can't keep you from getting a job. And then lastly, the big bill in the justice area is the Colorado Voting Rights Act. We wanted to take some major steps to protect this because the federal government has been chipping away at the Federal Voting Rights Act. And the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965 with Dr. King. John Lewis was there when we tried to get it re-upped and recodified in the federal space. They named it the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and he got to see that name before he passed away, but they did not pass it. And so what we did here was codify it into Colorado law that people cannot be discriminated against when they are voting because of their identity, nor can they be discriminated against in voter suppression or dilution? And that means drawing lines like gerrymandering that cut communities in half, that don't allow their voice in their communities to be represented. And so that bill, it was so important. It was the first bill introduced in the Senate. It is Senate Bill 1. And so the governor will be signing this bill. In fact, he'll be signing it on Monday. But I do want to shout out, there was a huge coalition that worked on this. The NAACP, Colorado Black Women for Political Action, the ACLU, Colorado Votes, League of Women Voters. And so everyone pitched in to say that in Colorado, regardless of what happens in DC, we will protect the right to vote and we will protect that districts be representative of their communities. So big shout out there. Woohoo! All right. And then lastly, for me, for priority areas of affordability, the bills that I sponsored is the Worker Protection Act and some security deposits and foreclosure protection. So I'll go to that second bullet point first. I want to shout out my colleague, Naquita Ricks. It has been an issue for her to protect homeowners against abuses of the foreclosure process, and against the ways that HOAs and metro districts could abuse their power. And so she and I she invited me to work on two bills with her. One was to say that if you are in foreclosure, you now have a stay, and this is what we said is you have like up to a 9-month period to sell your house at fair market value, so it can't be sold from under you for way below market and you can't recover any equity. So again, we passed a bill that said if you are in foreclosure proceedings, not only do you have a right to cure that, to get caught up, which didn't exist 2 years ago, but you have an opportunity to sell the house at fair market value to recover some of your equity. And so we created that as a right in statute. And, for all the things that we had seen and going on in Green Valley Ranch, we wanted to say how important this is, that people who have been first doing the right thing and were foreclosed on for fines because they couldn't find $5,000 to, get an oil stain out of their driveway. You shouldn't lose your house over that. But if you are struggling and you've paid, your mortgage for 10, 15, 20, you should have an opportunity to pull that equity out of your house before it is sold for much, much less. So that was really important for us to get past. The other bill that she invited me to work on with her was just to provide some clarity around security deposits. So before all of us are homeowners, we're probably renters, and you have to put first and last months down. And sometimes when you give up your lease, when you move on, they just keep your security deposit and you have no idea why. Well, we passed a law that says you must walk through to show people why you're keeping their money and put in writing why you're keeping their money. And so it's a small thing, but it's a big deal because there are too many apartment complexes that just bank on people not knowing that they can go get their security deposit back, and it's just forfeited. So it's like an income stream for apartment complexes to just keep security deposits. And that's a lot of money for a lot of us, And so if you were questioned whether or not you should get any of that money back, give us a call because we worked on that this session. Excuse me. Okay. And then the last big bill of my legislative highlight is the Worker Protection Act. And so this is Senate Bill 5. And what this bill does is say that in Colorado, if you want to collectively bargain, or that means enter a union and then negotiate together as a union, that you only need to do so in one vote. Colorado is the only state in America, and they called it the Worker Peace Act, that requires 2 votes. So federal law is just 1 vote of the majority, right? 50% plus 1 of people to determine if they want to create a collective bargaining unit. And that doesn't mean that a union is automatically formed, but it does mean that if they want to create one, they can. And again, that means they can create a collective bargaining unit. It doesn't even mean they've figured out their contract yet. It just means that they can collectively bargain if they want to. In Colorado and state law requires 2 elections, and the second election needs an even higher threshold to be able to unionize. And so we said that that is now antiquated. That law has been on the books for almost 100 years. Um, Out of the turn of the century into the 20th century, where, people were fighting for their rights at work, like physically. But now we live in a world where people are safe at work. Children don't have to work because we got rid of child labor laws. And that is because of the work that labor and union has done over the last century. And so we proposed a bill to get rid of that second election and to fall in line with an overwhelming number of states. For the flip side of it is we are also not a right to work state. We are a state, we wanted to say, where you have a right to become part of a union. And Colorado has said that if you get through 2 elections, not just one. And so the bill was very short. We just said you only need 1 election to create a collective bargaining unit. And so we worked on this bill, and all of labor worked on this bill. If you are a union member or your neighbor's a union member, I want to give a big shout out to SEIU, because there are a lot of people in House District 7 that work at the airport, and there are a lot of people who are union members who work at the airport. So we have the metal workers who work on the airplane. Shout out to them in House District 7. We have the service, the folks who are everything from the custodians to selling you food, all of those things. I just want to give a big shout out to labor, because union members from across the state, and it didn't even matter if they're Democrats, the Republican union members and the Democratic union members all came together to support this bill and said, in this state, we have the right to collectively bargain. We have the right to come together as workers to say what is safe in our environment, to say what we should be earning, to stabilize, wages. If Denver did not have a teachers union fighting for how much teachers get made, all schools would not have a consistent level, whether they're a public or charter school. And that's what we believe union does for the state. As Colorado grows and brings in more industry, like we want to start getting into manufacturing. Downstate, they're talking about nuclear. And I'm like, if you all think that those employees are going to work there and not have any worker protections, that's crazy talk. And so we fought and fought for this bill. We got it passed, but we believe the governor may want to veto this bill. It's more likely that he will, despite working with him in the business community for months and months. So if you have any time on social media, if you have time to email, please, please, please reach out to the governor and say, sign this bill or support workers. So again, you may see some articles about it. And the governor is, we believe, is taking on the mantle. Hold on 1 second. I'm so Okay, so you may see some news about it. And again, I just want you to know it was a big labor of love. It was 10 years in the making. It took all of session. We had many negotiations with the business community and the chambers, and they kept proposing things that would not have solved the problem. And so there was not a lack of an effort. Oh my God. Do you want to come say hi to Colorado people? Come on, Caleb. Come say hi. So, family, the doorbell rang. This is my nephew. Say hi, Caleb.
Hello.
Okay. Football star. Just saying. God bless America. I've also missed you.
Miss you too.
So people think I'm crazy because I've been working to protect young people like you in the legislature. Sorry. Name, image, likeness. Name, image, likeness. I got you. Okay. So thank you. I'm so excited. The TV is so tall. Oh my gosh. Okay. Sorry, family, but thank you. And so those are the big bills that we worked on this session. And so I just want to let you know that we are fighting for affordability. We are fighting to protect homeowners. And so just know that we got your back in the legislature. And if you have any thoughts, feedback on what we need to continue to work on, please, please, please let us know. All right. So now in the next couple of minutes, I'm just going to share with you all what all the Democrats have been working on. And let me just check the chat really quickly. Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you, Deanna. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. And so in the state, the Democrats have been working on trying to primarily protect our rights. We have been taking very bold stances, if you will, in dealing with DC and the president. And so this is a picture of when we passed Senate Bill 276 in the House. And you can't see the title here, but it's Protecting Civil Rights Around Immigrant Status. We know that the president has been really just doing things that are beyond unethical. They're kind of scary. People who are naturalized and are citizens are being profiled. People are being taken to El Salvador. And we have no idea if their immigration status will even be processed. There might be people there who do have legal status, but the way ICE has been working, it has been kind of scary. And so all the Democrats went down to the floor to take a picture when we passed Senate Bill 278. And I've never seen that before, but this was really a statement from us to say that we believe in our neighbors, and all we did was fortify the civil rights that you can find in both the Colorado and the federal constitution, our US Constitution, and say that if you want to pick up someone, you need to present a warrant, right? There are places that we have all recognized in the federal and state level that one should not be arrested. But I want to be clear, it's not all the places that we think. While someone cannot be picked up and processed for immigration at a school or at a courthouse, the places in between, we tried to do our best to protect, and we weren't able to do that. But what we do know is, again, we put state law behind saying it is not the job of any local or state law enforcement to do federal immigration work. Federal immigration work is civil status. It's not actually, technically, and legally a crime. It is a civil infraction. And it's the federal government's job to enforce that, not the state and local governments. And so that's what we enforced. And so we also enforced and reinforced and supported our places that, like our schools, and saying that if one wants to enter for the purpose of addressing immigration, they must have a warrant, which is technically already true at the federal level. We codified it into state law to ensure that our people got the signals from those who are paid by state and local government. And so we worked pretty hard to, here are a few things that we worked on to, again, safeguard our freedoms. You'll notice that it does include the Voting Rights Act. It also includes, quite frankly, creating a fund where we will need to go protect our laws in court. So we need to support our Attorney General right now, that's Phil Weiser, in defending our laws. And so we unfortunately have to create a fund. Some of the things that are happening is the president is freezing dollars. And it's not just because of DEI, it's because of all of the things. In fact, one of the biggest funds the president is freezing has to do with water and agricultural grants. So for everyone outside of Denver, I'm sure we've got hydroponics and urban farming going, but we receive quite a few dollars to support our agronomy, right? Or an agribusiness. Interestingly, Colorado is what we call a donor state, and so are all the blue states and the coastal states. And what that means is we put more money into the federal pot than we get out. So we are a donor state. Naturally, California is a donor state, New York. And so what we have now put together is a fund to support the Attorney General to get the federal funds that we are owed by contract and by virtue of paying into the system. And so it's interesting to us as Democrats that the president and those who typically support the president on the state level tend not to be donor states. That means the states that support the president their budgets, almost up to half of their budgets, are subsidized by the federal government. And so the states that support the president are not the states that, overwhelmingly put in money into the federal pot. And so, sometimes we're like, what would happen if the coast and the blue states stop paying taxes? Mississippi's budget would lose 45% of it. And so what we need to do is go and defend our laws and defend those programs, and we need to fund it now. So we are taking an invested interest in protecting our rights and protecting our tax dollars. And again, here's a little bit of highlights in the civil rights space, and I'll just leave it up. You see Senate Bill 1, that's the Voting Rights Act. You see down there Senate Bill 276, that is supporting our immigrant communities. But we also worked on strengthening the Anti-Discrimination Act for, it, while the president may not enforce federal discrimination law, we have codified it here in the state so that we can enforce it and that those can hold businesses, schools, entities accountable if they are discriminating. Okay. All right. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up. We've got about, 15 minutes left. Certainly wanted to stop to answer any questions. I see the chat. Thank you for putting notes in the chat. But if you have any questions around what's next, or if you have any comments or insights on what I should run a bill on, or what I should fight for, or what our perspective is, would love to hear from you all. And so if you don't have any questions here and now, please feel free to email us. Here is my email. Give us a call. You can follow us on social media, register for the newsletter, or visit my candidate website. So I'll pause there. I did a lot of talking. I talked for like a little over a half hour. But if there are any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, put them in the Q&A box, or put them in the chat. And if not, that's okay too. But just wanted to put a face to and have like a visual newsletter. This is such an opportunity to serve as your representative. I hope that our values are continuing to be aligned, and I hope that I have been able to do well by you in the Capitol. So I'll pause to see if there are any questions. And if not, I'll give you your Saturday back. Are there any questions? Any comments? All right, Colton, are you seeing anything?
I am not seeing anything right now.
Okay. Well, we got a few shout outs. Okay, here's a question. How can we help support Bill's next session? Thank you, Kathy. Great question. I think that one, you can keep in touch with what we're doing on social, but I'd love to send you back to the legislative website where you can see what we're working on in real time. And so if you haven't been able to see that, I'll share it with you quickly. I always want to be able to, sometimes we don't know precisely all the bills we're going to run before session, but during session, you can always follow what we're working on. So if you go to just the landing page, oops, that's not going to work. You can see what's happening that day at the bottom. Or if you're interested in particular topics, like if you care about the environment, you can click on the committee pages and it'll tell you which bills are coming up. I think what is always helpful, we love it when people can come and testify. And so after COVID, we made it possible that people can testify via Zoom. You don't have to take like time off of work. So if you ever want to testify, under the committee's link on the General Assembly webpage, you have public testimony options. And if you click on that, it'll give you a way to sign up. You can sign up if you want to testify in person or on Zoom, or submit something in writing. If you want to do it on Zoom, it'll next ask you which bill, right? Do you want to go to committee or whatnot? And so you can testify as well in support of the bills. And sometimes we need to hear from our neighbors about how these topics really impact folks. So again, for me, these are my priority areas. And I don't have to just stay in these areas, but you can always check out my site on the legislative page to see what bills I'm working on. And you can always sign up to testify. And again, the testimony, that you can find that on the legislative website under committees, just public testimony options. So I hope that answered that question for you. Okay. Can you get involved before a bill is written? Absolutely. So, and then what can we do during this break to support your work? It's really important. And I do want to shout out Ian's comment too. You guys could come to House District 7 Democrats meetings, and it's one Saturday a month, the third Saturday a month. The next one is the 24th in Montbello at the new Freshlow building. Also, big shout out to Freshlow. And it's the third Saturday from, is it 10:30, Ian? 10:30 to noon, the meetings, and you can hear what's going on, but you can also share what you need to be addressed, and I can pick up on it then. In the interim, we spend time out in community, email, call me. I'm doing meetings to learn what we should be writing about in the session. And then 10:30 to noon, and oh, I'm sorry, it's the fourth Saturday. Thank you, Ian. The fourth Saturday a month, 10:30 to noon. It's usually in Montbello. If they're going to change the location, they'll change that. You can also search, Colorado. You can search Democrats House District 7. It'll take you to the Denver Dems page where there is a page for House District 7, and you can see what's going on there. And then again, if there is something of interest to you, please reach out to the office. The interim time is when we research. By the time you get to session, you have a sense of the bills that you want to run, and you've done a lot of work in the interim. And then during session, you're just trying to convince your colleagues to vote for it. And so we are looking into that. I heard a few issues from our community. I heard there's questions on what are we doing in AI? There's questions on what's going on in the cannabis industry, what's going on in psilocybin. All of these things are popping up in House District 7. And then there's questions on how do we get outside? Can we support grants? So there's a whole bunch of things that come up for us. And so we're really excited to hear from you. Okay. And I'll go back to just ways you can reach out. You can get in touch with us on Facebook, Instagram, email, call. And so we just want you to know that there is a way to connect. All right. Here we go. Okay, any last questions? Okay. All right. Well, I hope I have done you all proud. Thank you so much for being fantastic neighbors. Thank you for everything that you all do. I'm honored to serve for you and with you. And I look forward to seeing you this interim. We'll try to check back in as we get closer to session so I can share out what we've heard and you all can point me in the right direction. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.